Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vinja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anutaro purisadhamma sarati satta deva manusanang buddho bhagava ti swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipassiko opanayiko pacchatang vedita bo vinyuhi ti supatipannano bhagavato savaka sangho ujupatipannano bhagavato savaka sangho nyayapatipannano bhagavato savaka sangho samicipatipannano bhagavato savaka sangho yadidang Tari purisa yugani attha purisa pugala ese bhagavato savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakhineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyakhetang lokasa ti evang buddhang sarantanang dhammang sanghang cha bhikkhavo Bhayam va chambitattam va lomahamso nahesati ti. So, we have explained the initial stage of the practice of mastering the samapatis. Samapati means the attainment, which is purifying the mind, stabilizing the shamatha nimitta, and merging with it. And we have come to the first attainment or first dhyana. There are many words because yoga is a very subtle science. There are many synonyms for this kind of state of unified mind. Samapati literally means attainment. The dhyana literally means the contemplation of the intensive contemplation of the object from near. Now we are emphasizing the process of attaining, so I describe the dhyana as attainment. Now we have talked about the attainment of the first dhyana. Now I always never tired of emphasizing there in learning the attainments there are two aspects. First aspect is removing the obstacles towards the attainment. That aspect is relatively easy. Once we have attained the dhyana, it is a very powerful experience, so it will stay in our mind. It will stay in our memory. However, the quality of the dhyana, unless one continues a practice, will be very low. The much longer process, and the process which in a way is more interesting, is a process of purifying the mind in dhyana from the tendencies towards defilements which are still there. These tendencies towards defilements, they are called anushaya, or Pali anusaya. Sui min, sui mian. Why sui mian? Because it is latent to the mind. This our previous habits of distracted mind, they are very, very stubborn. And to get rid of them is a long process. Among the disciples of the Buddha, it is said the Revata was specially gifted for staying without any difficulty 7 days in the dhyana. According to the tradition of the Visuddhimagga, unless one is nourished by the divinities, one can only stay 7 days in the dhyana. If one is nourished by the divine food, then one can stay much longer. Now, the Revata was very skillful in the dhyana, and those students of the Yogacara, Bhumi Shastra, know that the analysis of the Yogacara, Bhumi Shastra of the meditation is based on the so-called Revata Sutra, which is no more extant in Chinese tradition or in Theravada tradition. We will talk about the contents of the Revata Sutta and the Yogacara explanation of the meditation practice, its objects and its progress later if we have time. Now, important is to understand that learning the samapatis, the attainments, there are two aspects. The first, to attain by purifying the mind of the obstacles that prevent the higher attainment, and then the process of purifying the mind of the latent tendencies to the defilements, which is a very, very difficult process. So the dhyana that we experience, or that you experience, and that we ordinary practitioners experience, it is defiled dhyana. That means we still have tendencies toward defilements, even though these tendencies normally do not influence the presence of the mind on the meditation object. It still continues. So we have explained that according to the tradition, both northern and the southern, the studying of the dhyana, having attained the dhyana, one is to practice the 5 masteries, not go into the higher dhyana without having practiced the 5 masteries. To make sure, now some of the participants, they are taking the practice of deep concentration very seriously, and they are starting to do very well. So I should never be tired of the simile of the cow, which sees on the steep hill the very soft grass, and without stabilizing the back legs, back legs, is it okay? Without stabilizing the back leg, it wants to climb higher to reach the more soft and more delicious grass. But if the back legs are not stabilized, very unpleasant things can happen. And there may be cases when these different dhyanas, they get all confused together. So this is called in Visuddhimagga the Pabbateya Gavi, the cow wanting to climb high. But that cow is called a stupid cow. So you should make sure you do not want to become a stupid cow, and you practice the 5 masteries before attempting to eat the more tasty grass on the way up to the top of the hill. And what is the top of the hill? The most subtle feeling and perception in the world, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, the 8th attainment. The agamas, Samanyaphala Sutta and so on, they always emphasize that having attained the first dhyana, one should enter deeply into the joy and happiness of the first dhyana and let it penetrate the whole body. The simile is like a bath master. In the ancient times, they did not use soap. In some villages in India, maybe even in Africa, I do not know, they still use ashes. It is in a way more healthy, ashes and some minerals to clean the body. It is much healthier than using these chemical soaps. So the soap is a new invention. In the old times, no matter whether in Europe or Africa or China, they used the ashes and the minerals to clean the body. So one should let the whole body be penetrated by this bathing powder, Nahana Churna, so as to experience completely this joy and happiness of the first dhyana before going to the second. Now the Buddha explains in many different scriptures how the process of liberation is the process of attaining more and more subtle happiness. So these going through these different attainments is going through the more and more subtle states of happiness. And they should be mastered thoroughly. In the middle discourses of the Buddha, there is, in the last 50 suttas, there is, I think it is a sutta number 128, there is a so-called there is Upaklesa Sutta. In this Upaklesa Sutta, it is said that the Buddha under the Bodhi tree has, as we should know, has practiced the supernatural powers. And while practicing the supernatural powers, the access to the supernatural powers through the kasinas, we will have more time to talk about it sometimes later. He then completely purified the different kinds of dhyana. So, they are the dhyana with applied and sustained thought. There is a dhyana with sustained thought, without applied thought. According to the sutras, there are 4 dhyanas. According to the Abhidharma, there are 5 dhyanas. First dhyana with applied and sustained thought, then dhyana without applied thought but with sustained thought. Then dhyana without higher, then is dhyana without applied and sustained thought. Then there is a first and second dhyana which is together with joy, piti. Then the third dhyana is without piti. Then, of course, the fourth dhyana and higher is also without piti. Then there is a dhyana with happiness and without happiness. Very difficult to explain these states unless one has experienced them. The fourth dhyana is the dhyana without happiness, with neither happiness, with neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. But we practice the dhyana or the attainments for the sake of happiness. So what kind of happiness is that? It is a much more subtle happiness, which is called the happiness of equanimity. Then the formless attainments, they are all characterized also by the happiness of equanimity. But as compared to the fourth dhyana, they are without nanata sanya, without differentiation in perception. Because the object has no boundaries, there is no form. Form is what makes boundaries. So it is still more peaceful. Then going higher in different stages of the formless samapatis, one attains the most subtle object in the world, which is, so to say, the top of perception in the world. This top of perception in the world is called neither perception nor non-perception. That is the most subtle perception, so subtle that it cannot be called perception in the sense as we normally understand it. The still more subtle state is the samadhi without feeling and perception. That samadhi is the most subtle happiness. What kind of happiness is there without feeling and perception? No one can explain unless one has experienced it. What kind of happiness it is? It is the happiness of both the perceiver and the perceived being in the state of nirvana. When one has attained that state of happiness, then the liberation, of course, becomes easy. So the way of attaining liberation is explained as attaining the more and more subtle states of happiness. And the meditator should completely penetrate with all his beings, these more and more subtle states of happiness, so that he can get rid of these subtle tendencies towards defilements which still appear in these states of dhyana. So it is very important to take time to and to practice with devotion. Actually, the devotion is the most important aspect in the practice of the dhyanas. When one is fully devoted, then the practice becomes actually quite easy. And we have said, and especially emphasized, that devotion in Buddhism, in the sense of Shraddha, implies understanding. It is not just a blind faith. So, this devotive aspect in the practice of the dhyanas should especially be emphasized. In the Abhidharma Kosha, the Vasubandhu explains this devotion as prema, the religious love, we can translate. There is no really suitable English word for translating the Sanskrit word prema or pema in Pali. It is love, the religious love that opens fully the gate to purification of the dhyanas from defilements. The deep practice of the dhyanas is nothing special in Buddhism. It is actually the common to all religions. In all religions, no matter whether it is Western, Eastern, Northern, Southern, those who have had deep religious experience, they always practice the dhyana. They practice with love and devotion. So they were able to penetrate fully into that state of unification of mind. So, in fact, all great religious leaders, they were the lovers of dhyana, the devotees of dhyana. And the Mahayana literature especially emphasizes that the bodhisattva should be the lover of dhyana. This is a way for attaining the Buddhahood. The Buddha, as a bodhisattva, innumerable times went to the Himalayas and practiced the dhyanas. Only in his last life as a Sakyamuni Buddha, he did not go the northern direction, he went the southern direction, which is very unusual. Normally those who are devoted to dhyana in India, they go the northern direction towards the Himalayas. The Buddha, so to say, came from the foothills of the Himalayas and practiced in the plains. And what practice did he do in the Himalayas before he practiced in the plains in his last life? Especially the practice of the 4 divine abodes, the Brahma Viharas. This practice is the practice of the devotees. And it is especially emphasized practically in all religions, in Hinduism, in Christianity, Judaism, Islam. The true devotees, they always practice the absorption of love and compassion. Now, the peculiarity of in Buddhism is that this practice of dhyana is or preparatory practice of dhyanas is practice on the worldly objects like colors, or light or fire. It is not in the tradition of the agamas, it is not practiced right from the beginning on the concept of the highest reality. In the days of early Mahayana, still the traditional topics of the, meditation were still emphasized as the base for learning the many different samadhis the bodhisattva has to learn. And in the early Buddhism, it was especially emphasized that this practice of the 5 masteries, the last practice, is of extreme importance to see the impermanent nature of the attainments connected with worldly objects. So, as long as the object is a worldly object, the samapati will always be still linked to the impermanence and the laws of cause and effect. This was especially emphasized. So each and every stage of samadhi has to be practiced with the investigation of the causes and conditions for this intense contemplation. Now we are talking about the Anapanasati meditation. And we have been so far concerned only with the first part of the Anapanasati meditation. And in the first part of the Anapanasati meditation, that is the mindfulness of the body, we have been only concerned with the shamatha part, not yet with the vipassana part. When the shamatha part is practiced, and when one is successful in it, then one can go to the next set of 4 exercises of the Anapanasati, which is contemplation of the feelings with the help of the in-breath and out-breath. So the 5th exercise is in the Anapanasati meditation, is while breathing in and breathing out, piti patisamvedi asasisamiti sikhati, piti patisamvedi pasasisamiti sikhati. While experiencing joy, I breathe in and breathe out. Now, how long can one practice breathing in and breathing out, experiencing joy, unless one has attained the attainment? One will find it very difficult. So the condition for the contemplation of the feelings, which is the second part of the mindfulness of the breath, is that one has attained the samapatis with happiness. Because one has distinguished the factors of the first dhyana, applied thought, sustained thought, joy, happiness, one-pointedness of the mind. When one goes out of the jhana, one can see very clearly happiness, and one can see very clearly its appearance and disappearance in each and every moment of perception. So after having completely imbued oneself with this joy of the first dhyana, or of the second dhyana, which is also with joy, then one observes it in the process of arising and passing away in each and every moment of perception. So, having imbued oneself with the happiness, with the joy, like smeared one's body with the Nahana Churna, with the bathing powder, then one contemplates this joy as a suffering of impermanence, seeing it appearing and disappearing in each and every moment of one's experience. So one will enter into the deep study of the impersonal nature of the feelings. It is the feelings which govern the mind. Our samsara, in a way, is nothing but our feelings. When you can master your feelings, you can master the samsara. And this mastery of the feelings is called by the Buddha the Arya Jnana, the knowledge of the noble ones. So, especially if one wants to give rise to the bodhicitta, to the mind of supreme enlightenment, not differentiating between oneself and others. This training is especially useful. Using the feelings and detaching from the feelings. We will talk about it later. Now we want to describe the process of entering the second dhyana, especially since some of us are right now in the process of learning. So, how does one attain the more subtle happiness of the second dhyana and the way of attaining the more subtle happiness of the second dhyana is to get disenchanted with those factors of mind which make the first dhyana imperfect experience. what is the imperfect experience in dhyana? The imperfect experience in dhyana is the impure state of equanimity. This impure state of equanimity is to be seen as an obstacle to the deeper appeasement of the mind. Only when it is seen so clearly, one will be able to drop it. And one cannot drop the all obstacles to the pure equanimity at the same time. One has to learn to drop them one by one. In the this is the tradition, as we have said, of the Abhidharma, which emphasizes the detailed analysis of all the experiences. In the tradition of the sutra, the applied thought and sustained thought is dropped together. In the tradition of the Abhidharma, first one drops the applied thought, then one drops the sustained thought. And how does one drop the applied thought? Having fully imbued oneself with the happiness of the first dhyana, having learned the 5 masteries of the first dhyana, here one has to add, having learned to some extent. It is impossible to learn them perfectly, especially the 3rd mastery of deciding to stay in dhyana as long as one wishes, and in a pure dhyana. The other masteries are very easy, but the 3rd one is, as all who have practiced dhyana know, is a very, very difficult process. So, just as we have explained the process of disenchantment from the joy, so one has to practice the disenchantment from the applied thought. One sees it as a factor of mind appearing and disappearing in each and every moment of perception. And as a factor of mind which is very rough. It drags the mind literally to the object and hits the mind against the object. For this very reason, for example, the Zhi Fashe in Chang Polomi says that this applied thought is in fact a physical sensation because it is very rough. So it is very easy to drop when one sees this kind of rough nature of the applied thought. It is very easy to drop. In the process of attaining the first dhyana and in the process of learning the Vipassana, however, this applied thought is the most important factor of the mind. But when one wants to appease the mind, it is in fact the enemy of appeasement. Which is very obvious. That is why the Yogacara Bhumi Shastras considers the applied thought as a subtle defilement. Even in the Hindu yoga, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and so on, this gross nature of the samadhi with applied thought is analyzed. So it is the most important factor of mind for learning the dhyana, but when one has learned the attainment of the first dhyana, it is the most gross factor to be abandoned, the most disturbing factor. This very factor also is in the tradition of yoga responsible for our speech. We can speak due to this factor of mind. Which literally drags our mind to the object that we want to articulate. When this applied thought has been appeased, the joy and happiness, which are the advantages of the dhyana, in the state of first dhyana, that which brings mind to the object is the applied thought and sustained thought. That which is a base for the experience of deep contemplation is the one-pointedness of mind, and that which is responsible for the advantages of this state of deep contemplation is precisely this joy and happiness. So, three factors to be distinguished here. Now, when the rough nature of the applied thought has been clearly experienced, then one will be able to experience also the sustained thought as a rough kind of conditioning, causing the mind to be not in peace. So when one has for the first time experienced the first dhyana, one may think that this is the most pleasurable kind of experience that there is in the world, but when one stays with it and investigates it, one will find it rather rough. That is why I have said that from my experience of teaching meditation to yogis who have had long experience in Vipassana, some yogis experience the bliss of the first dhyana immediately aware of its suffering. Precisely because of this quality of being direct to the object. Now, when one has clearly seen the rough nature even of the sustained thought, then one can drop it. Either one drops them together or separate according to the Suttantas, or together or according to the Abhidharma, or together according to the Suttantas. Whatever way one likes, one can do. If one likes the Abhidharma teachings, which analyzes everything in detail, so it is much more advantageous to drop step by step, first applied thought, then sustained thought. Now, when these two factors have been dropped, one experiences peace of mind, which is much deeper than the peace of mind of the first dhyana. So, in the Buddhist tradition, the first dhyana is called, it is born out of isolation from vivekaja, isolation from the defiled feelings, defiled joy, happiness, and unpleasant feeling, mental and physical. Or in the state of dhyana, the feeling is always wholesome. So it is called, technically, the dhyana is called technically the one-pointedness of the wholesome mind. In the wholesome mind, the feeling is wholesome. In the unwholesome mind, the feeling is unwholesome. What means a wholesome feeling? Wholesome feeling means the feeling with sankhara upekha. We have already explained. Two kinds of equanimity. The equanimity of feelings and the equanimity of formations. The wholesome feeling is with equanimity of formations. Equanimity of formations means if one is experiencing the wholesome one-pointedness of the mind, one does not cling to pleasant sensation and one does not push away unpleasant sensation. Does not resist unpleasant sensation in the sense of anger. Now, in the state of dhyana, all unwholesome feelings have disappeared. That's why the feeling becomes very stable. Where there is stable feeling, the mind becomes stable. The unstable feeling is responsible for unstable mind. You should be very well aware of it in daily life too. So this is very important advantage of the practice of the dhyanas. The feeling become very stable. So now we have attained the second dhyana according to the Suttanta, or the third dhyana according to the Abhidharma. And we do not need anymore this applied and sustained thought to bring our mind to the object. It becomes subtle enough to drop it. We have already explained that according to the teachings of the Abhidharma, that which brings the boat of the mind to the object, it is the will and this applied thought. They are like two oars of the boat. The rudder of the boat is the attention, which is called making in the mind. You only make something in the mind when the mind has direction. The direction of the mind, that is the attention. When the mind has no direction, it does not arise. And when it is not pulled towards the object with the two oars of will and applied thought, the object will not be distinguished clearly. So the applied thought is the main instrument of wisdom. In the process of learning Vipassana, the yogi is completely dependent on the applied thought. In process of learning Vipassana, in the sense of differentiating the real qualities of the object. What means traditionally Vipassana? Vipassana means differentiating the own quality and the common quality, or own characteristic and common characteristic of all the objects of our experience. Those mental factors who are most active in this job is precisely applied and sustained thought. The differentiation, of course, by the power of the sustained thought is more detailed and more thorough. Now, in the second dhyana, according to the Suttanta, these two mental factors, applied and sustained thought, that are the necessary condition for Vipassana, have been dropped. So how does the mind get a hold of the object? By the factor called, very interesting factor, mental factor, called adhyatmika prasada. The inner faith of the mind, or inner conviction of the mind. This inner conviction of the mind, or inner faith of the mind, its nature is nothing, according to Abhidharma, than the Shraddha. We have already explained that the Buddhist faith means arranging oneself with the object. Okapana. Clarity about the object. Now, when the applied and sustained thought have disappeared, the object becomes very clear. So that state of deep contemplation is not anymore called born of isolation, it is born of samadhi. The strength of the samadhi is increased precisely due to this force of conviction, of arranging oneself on the object, by the lucidity of the mind. faith and lucidity is one process. And again, the advantage of this state of deep contemplation is joy and happiness, and the base is again the wholesome one-pointedness of the mind. And let us finish here. We will continue tomorrow.